Vanachari Munatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Jnana Timidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshudun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatadine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So today I was given a few different topics to choose from, so I chose the association of sadhu, the importance of associating with devotees, Sadhu Sanga. Somehow this one resonated most with me, so I thought I'd speak on it and just share my realizations of what is really Sadhu Sanga and how also Sadhu Sanga for us changes as we sort of grow and mature in our Krishna consciousness. How that develops and how that changes and how that progresses, because it's not exactly always the same. And so, so I'll share a little bit about that. I want to just start off by reading a couple of verses, one from the Chaitanya Charitamrita and then one from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from Madhya Lila 22:54. Sadhu Sanga, Sarva Shastra Koy, Lavamata, Sadhu Sanga, Sarva Siddhi Hai. Translation: the verdict of all scriptures is that by even a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all success. So even by a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all success. So, and then the next one is from the Srimad Bhagavatam 4:834. I'll just read the translation and purport. Every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate toward him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Purport. Generally, when we find someone more qualified than ourselves, I'm going to ask a question. What do you think happens when we find somebody more qualified than ourselves? What happens to us in our mind?
We'd like to associate with them.
That's very elevated. I'm looking for a less elevated answer.
Sometimes you feel inferior about yourself.
Okay. So that's also good. That's also a good one. What else?
We want to be like them.
Okay, so we want to be like them. Okay. Something more? I'm looking for one specific word or phrase.
We feel envious.
We feel envious. Yes.
Intimidation.
Yes, exactly. Feel envious. And then when on a very high level, like Ram Vijay Prabhu, then we want to associate with them. So generally, on my level, I first feel envy, and then the battle starts. Then I to myself. So I'm going to continue reading the purport. We become envious of him when we find someone less qualified. Then what do we do? When we find somebody less qualified, then what do we do in our mind?
We feel proud.
Yeah, no, that's true. We feel proud. We feel better than themselves. What else?
We want to show off.
Okay, yeah, that's true. We want to show off. Exactly. Anything else?
Yeah, we don't respect their opinions.
Very good. Yeah, that's also very good. We want to show off. We feel proud, and we don't respect their opinion, especially in a devotee environment, right? You ever had somebody junior to you tell you something? You want to you want to respond the way you would respond if a tennis ball was coming at you and you had a tennis racket in your hand, right? Out of here. Okay, we'll keep reading the purport. So when we find someone less qualified, we deride him. And when we find someone equal, we become proud of our activities. These are the cause of all material tribulations. The great sage Narad therefore advised that a devotee should act perfectly. Instead of being envious of a more qualified man, one should be jolly to receive him. Instead of being oppressive to a less qualified man, we should be compassionate toward him, just to raise him up to the proper standard. And when one meets an equal, instead of being proud of one's own activities before him, one should treat him as a friend. One should also have compassion for the people in general who are suffering due to forgetfulness of Krishna. These important functions will make one happy within this material world. So, what's kind of interesting? So these are three nice levels described. When you meet somebody superior, you get envious, but then we're not really supposed to be envious of them. We should be, we should welcome them and serve them. So that's really the way, we should happily receive them. And when we see somebody lower than us, we shouldn't think of them as being lower than us. Right? We should be compassionate to them and help them in some way. And when we meet somebody equal, we should treat them as a friend. Now, the problem here is that in our condition, we're envious of all three, actually. That's what happens if you really think about it. When someone is obviously, when someone is clearly above and beyond you, and it's really obvious, then there's not that much envy because you're like, okay, well, yeah, it's obvious the difference between me and that person. You kind of want to be like them. You want to have what they have. Maybe you just don't want to work as hard to get what they have, but you just want what they have without the work. And then, especially when we get to our peers, that's when a high level of competitiveness starts to take place. And this is in all environments. This is in the work environment, happens in school, it happens in devotional circles too. Right? Any two people doing the same kind of, and you could be friends with them, unless you have a very, very deep level of friendship with that individual, you'll start to envy them. And even if you have a deep level of friendship, some envy may arise. And if someone is junior, as long as they remain junior, there's no envy. Right? It's really interesting how envy sort of pervades all of them. At the moment someone new to us starts to do things in a better way, because they're skilled in their own way, and they'll start doing certain things better than us. Maybe it's giving class, maybe it's managing, maybe it's kirtan, maybe they're just a naturally gifted musician and they come in and they rock a kirtan, which you've been struggling to do for 5-10 years. Or maybe they're just better at making garlands or deity worship, whatever it may be. The moment they surpass, our envy starts to show up. So, so unfortunately, we could be envious of all three levels: seniors, peers, and juniors. And so when we have this, and of course we naturally are, and we do have a natural envy in us right now in this material world. We have to recognize that. And nothing to, to some degree, yeah, we can be ashamed of it, but at the same time, not beat ourselves up, because that is the condition right now. If we are ill, then we're ill, right? So we have this sickness. And when we have this, we should understand that it becomes hard to really and genuinely associate with someone. Because if we're so busy comparing ourselves to them and feeling ourselves superior to them, or wishing we had the same post as them, or the same service as them, or the same recognition as them, wishing all of this internally prevents us from really associating with them, like on a deep level, in a proper way. So when we are with them, we're not really making much advancement because we're too busy in our mind calculating how we're better than they are. That's not association. And that's happening in our mind very quickly. We've been doing this kind of a thing in our mind all our life. From as children, we try to size people up very quickly our entire life. We size people up and we try to figure out and it's happening on a subtle, unconscious, subconscious level, actually. We may not even be aware of it, but subconsciously, we are creating a distinction between us and them, whoever it is. As soon as you get into a group of individuals, we'll start going through them and thinking how I'm better than each one of these people. Like it's such a crazy thing that we do. Immediately you start to think, okay, that person, okay, maybe better looking than me, but I probably have more money, or I'm probably smarter. I'm probably a little bit more successful. Like, it's just crazy how we're doing this literally all our life. From the moment that we're able to think, we've been doing that kind of thing. And if, we just have to catch ourselves because it's happening on the background. We don't recognize that we're doing it, but it's happening almost instantly. It's like a trigger. The moment you come across someone, it doesn't take long before suddenly in the back of your mind, you've made a judgment about them and you found some way to possibly be superior to them. So naturally, as soon as we get, like it happens in the workplace, you get into the workplace and you start figuring out who's who and who can do what and, who you're better than. It's just that, we do this and we've been training ourselves to do this because of our false egos. And the reason we're like this is because we were like this in our previous lives. That's just what it is. The same mind has been passed down, and all the garbage that was in the mind before is now here along with us right now. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita verse says that even by a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all success. So are we really associating? Are we properly associating? Is our mind letting us associate with the people we're around? Or are we judging them? Are we comparing ourselves? Are we criticizing them? What are we doing? What is our mind doing? Or are we actually associating with them? And associating with a senior, basically the difference between associating with senior, junior, and peer. With a senior, you offer respect and service. With a junior, you offer affection and care. And with a peer, you offer friendship. Now, when we are dealing with seniors, the relationship is obviously different than it is with the others. So let's say the senior, I guess the most obvious example could be associating with your guru, right? Like your spiritual master or somebody on that level, let's say. Somebody on the level of your guru or your guru. It's somewhat of a formal relationship. Definitely, it's easier to not be envious to your own guru, even though that can happen, because that can happen. We're envious beings. So you see all the sort of like the popularity and the, all the facilities that the senior devotee can have, your guru can have. And that, if we're not in the right consciousness, we can even become envious of that. envy has no, it doesn't discriminate. Envy doesn't discriminate. It can just attach itself to anybody. And so I think that's where we have to be able to really understand our mind and what it's experiencing in that moment. We need to be conscious of it. Like it's Krishna consciousness. We need to be aware and conscious of the our mind and how our mind is. If we are feeling envious of our guru, to at least acknowledge it to ourselves. And then we can be, oh, Krishna, no, I can't believe I felt envious. Or of the senior devotee, I'm feeling envious of them. And I think that it's important for us to acknowledge that and be honest with ourselves. Otherwise, what will happen is we'll hold on to that tendency for the life of that relationship. That we'll always just be envious of that person. If we haven't taken steps to acknowledge and get over that, it'll just stay with us every time we see that person. And now what's happening is that envy is preventing us from actually associating. It's like the wall. They're there physically, you're there physically, but we're not able to take advantage of that. We're not able to offer respect and service. How can you offer respect to someone? It's hard to offer respect, let's say, if you're envying someone. It's just like hard. You try and it's hard. It's just very difficult to internally bow your head towards someone if you're envying them. And it's hard to offer service to them. So I think at least we have to acknowledge that I'm like this and pray to Krishna to help us with that, and then do our very best to offer that respect and serve. And of course, the relationship is different between a peer and a junior and a senior. With a senior, it's somewhat of a formal relationship, right? There's some kind of a distance maintained between you and that person. You don't act very casually. And, and someone like that is basically their responsibility to interact with you is in a capacity of a teacher. They guide us, they correct us, they give us feedback, they advise us. And that's really usually where the relationship is. There's definitely some level of friendship that develops, some level of intimacy, some level of casual behavior, some level, not too much, some level. That develops over the years as intimacy develops. But ultimately, there is a clear distinction. And you are not really yourself, because we know that when a senior person comes around, we are on our best behavior, our absolute best behavior. Kind of behavior you generally will not see. It's that kind, until we come to that point when the behavior in front of seniors and others is almost the same. That's pretty incredible, actually. That when we can have that level of behavior consistent with no matter who we're associating with, that is a powerful place to be in. That's a powerful state to be in. And I don't really know how long it takes to get there, but it takes a while. But that is the ideal place. That can I be equally respectful in front of all three? But at the same time, there needs to be a distinction between how we interact with the senior than peers and then juniors. So for example, for the junior, you're kind of a role model now, whereas your senior is your role model. So again, the same thing as when you're with a senior and a junior. Now you're a role model, and you also can't have casual behavior so much. Like you can't have it with a senior, you also can't really have it with a junior. Again, it could happen over the years, like after 5, 10, 15 years, if you've known each other, then you don't really want to see them as a junior anymore. That would be inappropriate, that would be immature. But initially, you can't really be yourself. Just like you can't be yourself with a senior, you can't be yourself with a junior either. Right? You can't be too casual with a senior, you can't be too casual with a junior. Right? So these distinctions are there. You're in a more of a mentor role now. And you kind of also need to be on your best behavior. Because otherwise, if you're not, then it hurts their faith. So this is also associating. So this is us associating. Again, this isn't exactly related to the Chaitanya Charitamrita verse, where the pure devotee, right? But the senior, we have to see them as a pure devotee. Whatever their shortcomings may be, we have to see them as a pure devotee. And then So what I really sort of wanted to talk about is the peer level association. And I think that at a certain point, what I've realized, and maybe this is just my own realization and what I'm experiencing now in my own Krishna consciousness, and what I feel is important for devotees who've been around 10, 15, 20 years, I feel like the most important I feel that.
I've lost your
Yeah.
audio for the last 10 seconds.
Oh, really? Okay.
You were going to talk about in your own Krishna consciousness.
Okay. So in my own Krishna consciousness, and I feel like for those who've been around 10 plus years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, I personally feel that peer level association is going to be the most important. And I have to think about this, and I don't want it to sound controversial, like, oh, wait, isn't seniors the most important always? It is. At the same time, I feel like for us to remain, so here's why I feel peer level association is probably going to be the most important after like 10 years of Krishna consciousness or 5 years of Krishna consciousness. It's different for everybody. Everyone's in a different place in their life, different space. And somebody started off really high level because of their previous lives. So it could be different. But what I mean is that after you've been around for a little while, I feel like peer level is going to be the most important. And here's the reason why, because I think after a certain number of years, if we've been diligent in our studies and attending classes, you've heard hundreds, maybe thousands of classes. You've studied the Bhagavatam, Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, either reading it or through lectures. You can pretty much give classes on any of it within 30 minutes preparation time. You can give a class. You know, after 10 years, you probably can. I think most of us can say, hey, can you give Sunday feast now? Probably most. I'm guessing a lot of people probably could wing it and do a decent job at it. So, and we also know, we've learned what is the proper way to associate with devotees. We've learned, you know, all the basics of Arti and what is Nam Aparad, what is Didi Aparad, what is Seva Aparad, what is Vaishnava Aparad, what is proper Vaishnava etiquette and culture. We've got that down pretty well. Whether how much we apply it or not is different. And that's why we do need to keep listening to this, you know, senior devotees, the senior level association. We always need to hear that. But what happens is I think that where the peer level, at least what I'm really feeling right now, is that, you know, we need people at a certain point in our lives, as I make this distinction that with seniors and juniors, you can't be yourself fully. We need people with whom we can be ourselves. Like when I say ourselves, now here, I'm gonna go back. Can everybody think of a friend from high school, like a really tight friend that you had in high school? Everybody I hope can remember like a friend that you could just like, whatever, right? That's what I'm kind of talking about. And of course, I'm not talking about doing all the nonsense that you did with your high school friends. I meant that you could just be yourself and they wouldn't misunderstand you. And if they did something stupid, you wouldn't misunderstand or judge them because you knew that this is a one-off thing and this is not something that otherwise you wouldn't be their friend, you know? And so we just need, because with the other two, again, there's a distinction, there's a distance, we can't be ourselves. And with peers, we should have enough peers where we can literally just be ourselves. Having a conversation with a peer, we don't have to pick and choose each word like we do with a senior or with a junior. If you're giving some advice, you have to really be thoughtful of what you say and how you say it so they don't misunderstand and it hurts their faith or something like that. And peer level association also this is a relationship and conversation you have without formality. With seniors, there's formality. You're offering obeisances and they're sitting on a certain level. You sit on a certain level generally. With a junior, it's the same thing. They're really respectful to you. They're trying to touch your feet and everything. Yeah, stop it, you know? So, but like, you know, there's all these formalities that are just created in that relationship. And And so with a friend, with a peer, you don't do that kind of thing. And what happens is when we come to Krishna consciousness, we have so many formality sort of based things that make even peer relationships a little bit challenging. You know, like, yeah, we're calling each other Prabhu. That's immediately like master. Like, oh, master. We're offering pranams to each other. You know, we're stealing prasad off of each other's plate. We create all of these, like, we create formality. You know, our tradition helps us or makes us create formalities between ourselves and others. It just creates them. And not that formality is a bad thing, so don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying throw all formality, all etiquette, all culture out the window. Formality is very important, but not with our peers. We can be ourselves, we can be informal, we can be respectful and caring without all that formality, because that formality may prevent us from really expressing ourselves in an open way that we want to and need to express. We have a need to express ourselves openly and honestly. And if we create a lot of formalities, it's going to prevent us from sharing in an open and honest way. So with a friend, you know, this is not a person that when you talk to, or if they talk to you, that you're necessarily going to be, you know, you can talk to them in a way where you know that they won't judge you. And they won't try to preach to you. And you won't try to preach to them if they come to you with something on their mind. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't preach to our friends. But what I mean is that we have such a deep level of friendship and understanding that we're able to listen to them. And when the time is right, at the appropriate moment, then and only then do deep level friends correct each other and offer each other suggestions and advice. But you know going into that conversation that they're just going to listen to you and understand what you're going through and what's on your mind. You can reveal to them anything you want. And they won't be like, oh, how could you do that? Why would you do that? Like, that's not the first sentence that's going to come out of their mouth. Because you know that you're not going to go talk to that person. The person who's going to say that, you're not going to be talking with them. You're not going to be associating with them. They're going to listen to you and try to understand what you're going through and try to understand what your emotions must be like and try to understand the pain that you must be experiencing. And they'll ask you to tell them more. They just want to hear everything. And then they will sympathize and they will empathize. They'll try to put themselves in your shoes, which is something we would also do for them. We would try to put ourselves in their shoes and really live in their shoes and try to understand what they're going through. And then provide the comfort that we feel is best for them in that moment. Or advice or suggestions that we think could be helpful. Or maybe even just saying, what can I do right now to help you through these difficult moments? How can I support you? Just tell me what you need and I'll do it. And if we're close enough with them, they may even understand what we need and just do it. Right? So this is a kind of friendship that also means that, because as I was saying, that as we stick around in Krishna consciousness long enough, again, 5, 10, 15 years, we may go through some very difficult moments in our Krishna consciousness. Right? We may have difficulty chanting our rounds after taking vows to do that. We may have trouble following the principles after making vows to do that in front of the deities and our guru and the devotees. We may have done something immoral, unethical, inappropriate. And if we feel like, and over the years, these things can happen. We are human beings. We have to remember that. just because we're devotees, it doesn't mean that we're going to stop acting like human beings. We should actually become more human after becoming devotees. But that human being means we have the tendency to go through all of these challenges and difficulties. And if we don't have one or more individuals with whom we can straight up express our darkest moments, things that we would be ashamed to tell a senior and we definitely wouldn't tell a junior. You know, if we don't have that, that will start to eat away at us in our heart and mind. It really will. And that will turn into something really ugly in our mind. We will get bitter and angry, frustrated and upset that we don't have anyone to share it with. And then what we'll do is that we'll blame everyone for not caring about me. No one cares about me. No one's interested in what I'm going through. I have to suffer all this by myself. That's what could eventually end up happening. And then you have to ask yourself, why is it that I can't talk to anyone? There's two reasons. One is maybe in your society, there really isn't anybody you can talk to. That's a possibility. We can't ignore that possibility. But the other is that maybe we just haven't taken the time out to cultivate that kind of friendship and relationship. We also have to be ready to take on some of that responsibility ourselves. That maybe we just haven't taken the time out to associate with others, to be there for others, to care for others, to show up for them during their difficult moments. And so now that I'm going through something, no one's calling, no one's texting, no one's emailing me, and now I'm just upset at everyone else for not showing up for me when I haven't really showed up for others. So that's why I said earlier that after a few years in the movement, I feel that, you know, association of peers is going to become our most valuable association, literally our most valuable. And we can all ask ourselves, and you know, hopefully we all can think of, you know, are there and how many people are there that I could literally say anything to? Like anything. Like as Krishna says, even if one has committed the most abominable activity, I consider them saintly. Even if we've done the most abominable thing, whatever that may be. And I'm sure it takes about all of 3 seconds to figure out what that could be for each of us. Is there someone we can share that with? Is there someone we can tell, you know, our most abominable secret? Maybe you were out with your colleagues and they tempted you into having a drink. You know, maybe you were so stressed out and so many things, difficult things have happened in your life. You got so stressed out that you went to the bar and you ate meat and you drank a beer. And then you felt like, oh, I feel so much better now. Oh, but I can't tell this to anyone. So, you know, don't think this stuff hasn't happened in the association of devotees. Please don't think it hasn't happened. Just because I'm saying it doesn't mean it, you know, like, oh, I'm making up stuff. Stuff's happened. You know, who do we talk to when this happens? Or even worse, people could end up cheating on their spouses. Happens. Who do you talk to? Do you just keep it in your head? Keep it in your mind? And just get more and more frustrated that no one's there to reach out to you and to ask you how you're doing? Again, as I mentioned, there's 2 reasons that can happen. One is that maybe really you have a small community and there isn't really somebody there you can talk to. That's possible. It's totally possible. But then at the same time, maybe there is, and we just really haven't taken the time out to associate with them and be there for them in a non-judgmental way. And so I think more likely than not, it's probably we have to take responsibility of not being there for others. I feel like that's probably the bigger reason if we don't have someone. See, the thing that happens is when we first come to Krishna consciousness, you know, we get affected we get the injection of utsahamai, right? We get injected right into our vein, right? just a solid injection of utsahamai right into that vein, you know, and boom, you know, you're charged up. And that injection can last a good few years, believe it or not. Like it can go for like, you know, the duration is different depending on each person's maturity. If this was your first taste of Krishna consciousness and ever, that thing could just go on for a while maybe. If you've been in Krishna consciousness for a few lives, it may not last so long because you've already done that. You had utsamai like a few lives ago and it's just slowly wearing off. And so now what happens in utsamai is like, you're just so into serving and studying and like you're flying high, you're on that magic carpet, your feet aren't touching the ground, you know, you're just like loving everything and you're like, I don't need anyone. This is ecstatic. I go sing and dance with devotees, stuff my face with prasad, go home listening to a lecture, get home, immediately press play on another lecture, go to sleep, press another lecture, go take a shower, put on another lecture or kirtan. I'm eating breakfast, kirtan now, get in the car, boom, another kirtan. At work, bam, another lecture. It's just like, man, 24/7, I am a pure devotee, look at me go. And 5 years later, like, oh my God, it's been 2 weeks, I haven't heard a lecture yet. Gee, I don't really feel like listening to anything. You know, you overdosed. Nothing wrong, it's great. But what happens is in that time of that while that injection is there in our veins, running through our veins, one thing that we neglected was diving deep into the association, because that was kind of devotional service in the mode of passion to some degree. And when we're in the mode of passion, we ignore the mode of goodness. That means that we didn't, because we were so much on high, we ignored the association of devotees and didn't realize that, oh, actually, I'm going to need all of these people to actually make it for the next 20, 30 years. I need to spend time with them. But it's like, no. You know, hey, you want to go for a walk? No. I have to go, you know, I need to go listen to a lecture. Oh, okay, sure. We want to come over and just hang out? Oh, no. I'm going to be chanting 64 rounds today. Okay. Sure. You know, we keep doing this kind of stuff. And then we wonder why, when we need somebody to hang out with us, no one's around. No one's around. And now we're too embarrassed and ashamed to call them because we've ignored them for the last 4, 5, 10 years. But trust me, that time will come when you'll need someone. 1,000,000% guaranteed. And that's what's called maturity. And so it happens to us all where we're so flying high that we actually, in that state of high, we neglect other devotees' needs. And what we're actually doing is we're neglecting our own needs in that moment. We're neglecting our own needs as well. And we're just ignoring our health. We're ignoring our, you know, maybe even our work. We're ignoring our relationships. Everything is being neglected because of this high in devotional life. And that's where you need mature guidance. And most people, a lot of times, I think we just don't get that kind of guidance. Like, okay, we understand you're on a high. How much time have you spent with certain devotees? And when we spend time with devotees, like I was saying, like pure association, you don't always have to talk about, hey, what verse did you read on the Bhagavatam today? How was your japa? Oh, well, if we're not going to talk about that, then I don't even know why we're hanging out. So that can be also a very immature way of like associating with each other. That's how like a neophyte will associate with someone else. It's like, we're getting together, can you bring your Bhagavatam? No? Oh, no, okay, let's look up database. Like that, we're together, right? Together. Association means hearing and chanting about Krishna, right? Because anything else is not association.
Sorry, there's a bit of noise while you're speaking. It sounds like a wind or something like that. So the last thing you said, it was the last 10 seconds was really soft.
Oh, I mean, there's a fan, but the fan's been going for the last 45 minutes. Should I turn it off?
Maybe it's the hand near the computer or something, microphone.
Okay, maybe, okay, I'll let me see if I can remove my hand. I was touching my computer, but I wasn't touching the microphone area. Okay, let's see what happens now.
You don't mind what you said the last few minutes, Prabhu, sorry.
Few minutes?
A few seconds.
Like
okay. And if it happens again, please do let me know. So yeah, and a lot of times I think we have this immature understanding of association with devotees is that when we get together, it always has to be something devotional. Like, let's meet, let's sit in the temple room of my house with our Bhagavatams in hand. Like, that is association, right? So that can also be really good association. And that's also very important. But we also need to be able to, like, we've given up our outside friendships. We need to be able to have those outside friendships. Like if you look at some of these pictures that we have in our books, you see one of those pictures where, I don't know, is it Krishna or Balaram is lying down with his head on Krishna's lap. They're not reciting Gita shlokas to each other. One's massaging the other's head. Some of them, they're riding on each other's shoulders. Let me ask you, which of you have ridden on one of your devotee friends' shoulders in the last 15 years? No? I think we're doing something wrong with our friendships, by the way. We're not even following Krishna's example. Geez, all these years in Krishna consciousness, we haven't learned anything from these pictures, you know? So we haven't had any have we had some genuine fun with our Krishna conscious friends? I'm not saying go to a bar kind of fun. I'm talking about just getting together and just having fun and relaxing with them. You see, this is what it means to also become mature, that you can do those things, but it doesn't affect your faith in Krishna consciousness. It doesn't mean you're less of a devotee. If you look at what's happening in Krishna's pastime, they're having lots of fun. And that's part of being a whole and complete devotee, taking care of your spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical health. This is part of taking care of our emotional and mental health. That is absolutely crucial. If we're just going to be stiff devotees, stiff, strict, and rigid devotees, then we're going to miss out on the sweet and just real loving aspect of Krishna consciousness that we're supposed to develop, actually. And I'm also not saying that we should never get together with our friends and study or discuss things. We can have time for that. I have a time when once a week I get together with a group of guys that are in similar age, similar level of maturity. We have a Zoom call now because we can't get together. And we just talk about whatever's happening in our life, literally. No shlokas are recited. That's the rule. No scriptures. And I'm just kidding. That's not a rule. But we basically talk about whatever's on our mind. You know, if someone had a tough day, they said that, you know, I've been feeling depressed for the last few days. Or I just had a massive fight with my spouse. I don't know how, and I'm just cooped up in this apartment. So it's like we just get very real. Because now, you know, we can be real and we can lighten the load that we're feeling. Otherwise, that's going to lead to emotional and mental problems. That really will. And ultimately, that will lead us to moving away from Krishna consciousness, because we're going to start lacking that emotional and mental support that we need as a human being to remain healthy and positive and happy. If we're not emotionally and mentally stable and happy, you can be sure it'll affect your japa, it'll affect your association, it'll affect the mood in which you serve. So we can't just be neglecting our emotional and mental health. And one of the best ways to maintain our emotional and mental health is by having friendly relationships with devotees. When I mean friendly, I mean informal, casual, where you can be yourself, where you're not jumping to touch each other's feet and stealing food off of each other's plate. You can share food off of each other's plate in a friendly way, but you're not like trying to steal it, right? That's not what I'm talking about. Where it's cool if you eat some off of someone's plate and they don't even blink an eye and they do the same with you. That's cool, right? So but we can't artificially do this either. So we can't artificially just have a peer relationship. It has to be developed over the years. And I think in terms of peer relationship, like I said, for me, that's become the most important right now, like over and above everything else. And sometimes it does require us to pursue them a little bit. Because nothing is going to happen. A peer relationship isn't just going to happen automatically from my experience. I mean, if you're part of a community and two of you are just really gelling all the time, maybe it can happen automatically. But everything does require a little bit of work, proactive approach to relationships. If we're not proactive, it won't really happen. Like, you know, we formed a little group and some people on there didn't know each other so well. So I started to just say, hey, can we just get on a call, you and me? And then we got to know each other a little bit more. And so the next time we got on a group call, we knew each other more. And then gradually, after each time I talk to these people one-on-one, they start sharing like deeper stuff and darker stuff. And I'm like, okay, I think I can tell them a little bit more too. And then at the end, you're just like, okay, I don't have to live with guilt. I have my imperfections. And it's nice to be able to talk about them with the right people. Not everyone, obviously, with the right people who won't judge you. Because we all are struggling, or I shouldn't say all. Most of us are struggling in some way or another with our deep, dark anarthas. Lust, envy, anger, greed, pride, illusion, right? I think lust being a primary one, which leads to envy and greed and all the other stuff. It all starts with lust, and then just boom, it just affects everything else. And so I think that, that is something that we do require to be proactive. And also, it also means a peer relationship. For me, what it means is, again, as I mentioned this already, that when I talk to this person, they're not immediately looking to resolve my problem. They're not in problem-solving mode. So those who are men, the moment you start talking to them, you're already fixing your problem in their mind. And the problem with that is when you're trying to fix.
Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu, we're not able to hear you. The last thing we heard is when you're trying to fix.
Oh, okay. It's amazing. I touch my computer and something happens to the microphone. Okay, I'm just going to not touch my computer. Okay. This is good for me to know, so I don't do this in my actual seminars and stuff. So I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So one thing about having that mature relationship is that when somebody's revealing their mind to us, we don't want to go into problem-solving mode. Which means that, because a lot of times, and I know I've done this, and I'm sure a lot of us have, maybe all of us have, when someone's trying to tell you something, you start trying to figure out solutions in your mind. Oh, if you do this, you do, because now you got to remember, the brain, this is like the scientific research on this, the brain cannot multitask. It's just not possible. There's no such thing as multitasking. You can only do one thing at a time. If we could multitask, texting and driving would be no problem. There would not be any laws against texting and driving. The reason we can't do, even if you're like holding your phone up there, or trying, your brain is not picking up all the signals from the car in front of you. It just can't do that. It's just not designed to do that. We don't have like two different like processors and things going on, 4 sets of eyes, and one part of the brain is sending message to this part of these eyes, and another part of the brain is sending messages to these eyes, and it's not working like this. So when we are listening, we can only listen. If our mind is starting to figure things out, at that moment, you have to tell your mind to just be quiet and keep listening to your friend. And don't try to solve their problems. Maybe they don't want that at that time. And you have to ask them, what can I do right now to support you? And thanks, first of all, for telling me all of this. I'm sure it couldn't have been easy. So I think that that's important. And of course, at times, you may need to solve a problem, and that's okay. And they can tell you that I'm looking for help figuring this out. I can't figure it out. Then now you have to go into problem-solving mode. But if someone's going through some like difficulty emotionally, mentally, maybe someone's depressed, maybe someone's broken a principle, maybe someone's not following their vows, or someone's had a major challenge in their life, and then they come to you, that's when you need to be able to just like really put yourself in their shoes, empathize, put away your phone, put away everything, and just sit and listen. And that's how you develop peer level, really deep level peer association. And I just want to read something also, just so understand how valuable it is to have good friendships. And this came from an article from Harvard Health Publication. So this is from Dr. Waldinger. Just so important, just so you don't think I'm just kind of like speaking off the top of my head, whatever comes to my mind. Just some research on the importance of relationships. I'm going to read this. Good relationships appear to protect our brains. Being in a securely attached relationship is protective in your 80s, earlier too, but he's saying 80s. Those people's memories stay sharper, says Dr. Waldinger. People who feel they can't count on the other person experience early memory decline. So if you feel like you don't have anyone that you can count on, you actually start to experience memory decline. It starts to affect your memory. A little bit more. Social connections appear to be good for health. People who are more socially connected to family, friends, and community are happier, healthier, and live longer than people who are less well-connected, says Dr. Waldinger. And finally, a couple other items. Loneliness appears to be toxic. People who are more isolated than they want to be are less happy. Their health declines earlier in midlife, right? So midlife, 40s, 50s, their health starts to decline. Their brain functions decline sooner, and they live shorter lives than people who are not lonely. So, you know, just so we understand that we're not just speaking as devotees here, too much loneliness affects your mental health, your brain's ability to learn and understand things in midlife, 40s and 50s. If you're finding yourself isolated, if you really feel like right now, and I'd really like us to just think about it. Do you feel like you don't have anyone you can fully open up your heart and mind to? Like, ask yourself that. Like, really, really. If you don't, at least one. And actually, they even, the research also says, and I didn't copy it, but I do remember it. Like, they're saying that you should have like 3 to 5 friends like this. The research even says 3 to 5 is, 3 is good, 5 is better. You need to have 3 to 5 like this to really sustain your mental health. So your memory and brain don't start to decline. And it also says living in conflict, such as in high conflict marriage, is bad for your health. Living in the midst of warm relationship is perhaps protective of your health. So yeah, so, you know, this is just some research that they've done over the years. And I believe this research, I can't find the article, but this was a research that took decades to complete, because they followed these people for like decades to see how they were doing, studying people's brains activity, those who've been more isolated as opposed to those who'd had those deep friendships. So let me see. Yeah, and I think it's so important that we, you know, really take time out and be proactive in cultivating these relationships, because there will come times in our Krishna consciousness when our enthusiasm goes down. We don't feel the injection is worn off, the Utsahamai shot has worn off, and sorry, you can't get another one. It just doesn't exist. You only get one per life, pretty much. It's only one per life. And in those moments, and you know, our enthusiasm can go down for many reasons. You know, one basic reason is that you do the same thing over and over again as a repetition. Things become routine. It's just kind of standard, normal. Things become routine. They become repetitive. They're just not as exciting as can be. And we have so many responsibilities, and we're living in such hectic societies and lives that it's hard to develop a taste. So we're not developing a taste, so the other things are going down, which is pretty standard, pretty normal, right? It just happens over time. And other reasons it can go down is because sometimes life can just beat us up a little bit. You know, your health has gone down, your job's not working out properly, having trouble in your relationships, right? So these things can also cause a hit to our enthusiasm, you know, the repetition, the routine, problems in life, or just conflicts with other devotees. You know, that's a huge one, actually. That's probably the biggest one that can just like really just like zap enthusiasm. You just don't want to be, you just don't want to do anything anymore. And in those moments, for all of those reasons, if we don't have like that deep friendship, informal, casual, let it all hang out, be myself friendship, non-judgmental friendship, then we have to run the risk of like leaving Krishna consciousness, which is a huge thing because we spent so many lifetimes coming to Krishna consciousness, and now we walk away after, literally we've spent lifetimes coming to this point. And then we walk away. And so that's where I think that, you know, and if we don't have those relationships, we should really think about developing them, formulating them. And you know, what does it mean to have those? You know, you definitely have to have a certain mindset. You have to be able to think alike on certain things. On certain issues, you have to be able to think alike. And you have to be able to see to some degree with a similar perspective. That helps, not on everything, but there has to be a certain like-mindedness, like mood, that kind of thing to some degree has to be there. Like most of my really close friends are very different than me, but I think that's going to help keep me balanced in that way. But they all think differently. I have really good friends that won't always agree with me, but they'll tell me at the right time that, you know, I think what you were saying may not have been the right thing, or I think that wasn't, what you said sounded a little risky or dangerous or didn't sound appropriate. And I won't be bothered hearing that from them. Like, oh, okay, all right, thanks for telling me. So we need that too. We don't need, see, one thing is we don't also want blind friends. What that means is they just agree with us on everything, because that's also not a really helpful friendship. Because a lot of times what we'll do is, human beings, what we do is, not just devoted human beings, we find friends who will just agree with us on everything. Even if we're crazily wrong. Yeah, that was cool, that's fine, it's okay, no big deal, everybody does it. So we don't want that, you know, and we have a lot of those friends, and I've seen a lot of times, friends will blindly believe what their friends tell them. Like totally blind, just like blind. Okay, yeah, of course. Without even thinking that there may be another side to this. And I don't want that kind of friendship, because that friendship is damaging actually. That friendship will lead me into more offensive behavior. Because if they just like agree with me on the wrong things that I've done, then that's not good. That's not a good friendship. They understand me, they understand my hurt and pain, but they're okay in saying, you know what, you know, I think that's not good. That's really not good. But I'm here for you, and I'm here to help you through this. So we don't want, and I see that people, we do this all the time, that sometimes we'll believe something our friend or even our spouse tells us blindly, without even taking the time out, like just completely hear and just believe it, you know? Wait a second. If somebody told you something out of an emotional state, they're probably not telling you the full story. No matter if it's your spouse, whoever the heck it is. It's all tainted. Everything is a little tainted. I'm not saying disregard, but just like take a moment to understand that this is a lot coming across right now. There's definitely a lot of emotion. Emotions means facts are not fully clear. It's just not. So we also don't want that. So that it requires the maturity of a friend to be able to sit, listen, absorb your emotion, help you, be there for you, and at the same time, help you see the other side also. So anyways, that's sort of what I wanted to talk about in terms of devotee association. I'm not a big verse quoter. I don't have a lot of references that I pull out from 10 different scriptures, because I just haven't studied that many. You know, I kind of go by my own life experiences and a little bit from scripture. So I'm hoping that some of the things that I said were practical, relevant, something that you can, like, I really hope that you're able to think about some of the things that I talked about. Like actually think about them, like who are your really good friends and can you tell them anything? And if you have no good friends, why is that? What can you do to not develop them? How do you move forward? Because you will need them, trust me, 100%. And when you do give each other time, to do it really without being distracted, like give them your full attention. So I'm hoping some of this stuff was just practical, relevant, useful for you. I think we've gone over. I don't know if there's time for questions. I'm happy to stick around and answer questions if there is time for questions.
Thank you so much, Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu, for that absolutely spectacular and practical class. There were so many times during the class I had this big smile on my face, because I think this is a topic that is so important about peer friendships. And in my humble opinion, it's not talked about enough in our movement. Whenever we hear that verse, and I was not knowing what direction you were going to take with this class. I was so happy you started with that verse, Lavamatra Sadhu Sanga, because most times it's, you know, we only talk about the Senior Devotee Association or our job to help cultivate, but we don't talk about auto nourishment. So I thought this was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing such an insightful class. Devotees, if you have any questions or comments, please post it in the chat and we can kind of go through the questions. I had a question, Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu. We have a lot of teenagers, I think, hopefully they're listening in this class. And in today's, one of the things we see is this culture on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok where it's all about followers. It's all about the numbers that you get, and where there is this sort of feeling that, oh, if I don't have X number of followers, I don't have enough friends, or if I don't have, so how is that something that as we can help address, either we as, as parents or as teachers to teenagers or teenagers themselves, how do they combat this feeling that the number of my friends or my popularity or how successful I am is dependent on my Insta followers?
Yeah, and I think that that's obviously a more complicated thing, and I'm not a parent, so I feel a little bit, not qualified to answer those, but exactly, the specifics of this question, the challenges that come with having kids around, like I have no idea what those challenges, I can only imagine. I get a whiff of it when I'm around friends who have kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, but so I don't know the day in and day out of what the routine is like. But I think one thing is obviously leading by example. If we ourselves are obsessed with social media, you can't blame your kids for being obsessed with social media. So I think number one thing is to look at, like, am I addicted to that thing? Am I bringing my phone to the dining table? Am I checking, even if you're checking your work messages, like, can you just not do that for 30 minutes? Show them the value of eating together with your family and friends. Like, can I just leave it behind? I'm going to eat a meal. If I don't answer someone's message right now, it's okay, unless you're like, I don't know, unless you're like running the country or the city or the state, unless you're like a major government official or something, like there's a crisis in your city or something. I don't see why we can't just start showing by example that now we're sitting and eating. That means our phone is in the other room. And that in itself shows that this is more valuable than your likes and followers and things like that. So I think we need to start showing by example that we each other, our most important followers are the ones around this dining table, are the ones that live with us. These are our most important followers. We're all following each other. These are the ones, their likes really matter, right? Their likes and their comments really matter. So if while you're sitting at the table and talking about, that comment matters a million times more than what somebody puts on Facebook, because they're never gonna be there for you when you need them for something, right? So letting them know and having this talk like, yes, your comments matter right now. And I think that's one way. And I think they're kids. You can limit the time that they spend on social media, until 18, you can you have that power to do that, I think, and that you have to, you got to really monitor that before they outsmart you and like, you can't even access their stuff. So I think you got to like really monitor that stuff. And I think that's, as parents, we have a right to do that. I think you have a right to do that, but I would just say, help them understand really the value of personal relationships. I think that's the key thing. The sooner that they can learn, and that starts at home with the way we interact with them. If you're playing with your kids, you send a huge message by putting the phone away. Just put it away. Like they'll be like, wow, my mom or dad is really giving me their time. And this is how I'm supposed to give time to others. And teach them, when you're playing with each other, put it away. Look, I do it when I'm with you. Oh yeah, okay. They're more likely to do that. So this is the best way I feel I can answer this question. I'm sure there's many other answers, and there's probably a lot of you who have much better practical techniques on how to do this. But I think if we go to the foundation, show them the value of personal connection and how to value when you're sitting with someone, value them. I heard one motivational speaker talk about that. This is really interesting. It's somewhat related. Is like when you're talking with someone, right? And you say, hey, can I talk to you or something? And then they're holding their phone in their hand like this, and you're having a talk with them. Now, isn't it true on your mind, you're thinking that they're holding their phone, right? Like, that they're holding their phone. Like, so that means you're not the most important person for them now, like, because it's in your hand. But if someone says to you, hey, I need to talk to you, and you're like, oh, okay, put it away, right? If you put it away, now immediately, don't you feel like now you're the more priority for that person? Just by the act of putting it away. Or sometimes, it could be like sitting next to you, and then you like, as you're talking to them, you Yeah. So how was your, yeah. So what were you saying? Like, so that was like, you had a conflict. Oh, yeah. So, like that is such a, like, honestly, I'll be honest. I've done that. But it's such a disrespectful thing to do, actually, if you think about it, to like, peek over, like, can we just open our drawer, put it in there and close it? Now, imagine if you did that to someone. Imagine just that, how valued they would feel by you, right? Like if you threw it on a desk and closed it, and if you can't, just say, hey, I'm expecting an urgent call right now. And it's from my mom or my whatever, my spouse. So my phone's here and I might need to look at it if it goes off. Then they know that something is up. But if not, can't we just show them? And then that will reflect when we interact with our family. And I think that our kids will start picking up on that. Like they'll be like, oh, mom always puts it away. Dad always puts it away. Let me put it away. I've had conversations with people who've just done this so much. I'm like, I can't believe it. Like, and people that I respect, people that are incredibly advanced, and they're just managers, so they can't stop themselves. They're really management minded, so it's hard for them to do that. But really, at least for ourselves, if we want to set an example, let's just see how many different activities with our family we can just put it away completely, because whose likes and comments are more important than theirs?